This podcast intro, songs AI. It's on YouTube and Spotify. You can use your ears or use your eyes. It's 30 minutes randomized.
Welcome back to another episode of 30 Minutes Randomized. I am here with Natasha Massias from Datacubed, and she is one of my favorite people. Whenever I see her coming at a conference, I always get a big grin and get really excited. So welcome to the pod, Natasha.
Thank you, Steve. I've been super excited for this.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it as well. If you could really quickly just orient people to who you are, like where you're coming from, so they have a sense of your perspective when you're answering questions.
Yes, love that. Okay, so work for Datacubed. I am the Solution Architecture Director, which is a mouthful just to say that basically I lead all of our external demos for potential new clients to use our platform, which is eCOA mobile app for participants to really streamline that clinical trial perspective and process for them. But I also lead training efforts as well. So I have the commercial side, and I also actually directly work with the clinicians utilizing the platform to train how to get participants up and running in our system. So it's kind of nice to get to see both sides of the coin. So
Got it. Very cool. All right. Well, the way this works, if you don't already know, I am going to open the randomizer wheel and start clicking buttons, and it will determine the pace and direction of our conversation. All right, easy one to start with. I'm asking everyone this because I want to just get a sense of where people are at. How are you particularly using AI day to day? Like, what apps are you opening and what are you getting done?
oh my gosh, I use AI like for everything. It's literally my virtual assistant. And really,
All right.
it's to help me summarize and accumulate my thoughts and to get maybe more of a streamlined response and kind of help my workflow. Since I do kind of have double side of like the sales side, then also like technical training. I can be very wordy. So sometimes AI helps me kind of focus on, okay, here's a bunch of information. What are those like key topics that maybe I should really like narrow down my responses to? So I really use it to help me ensure that I'm being as clear a communicator as possible. Just given my role is again kind of salesy, but also specifically for training. I want to, that's kind of a trainer's job, is to take complex ideas and then kind of minimize it, or not minimize it, but kind of shorten and reword it in a way that more people can digest and understand that info. So,
All right, cool. So like interacting with it for productivity, for like enhanced output, at like kind of the point of need. Are you like building agents? Do you have anything running in the background, like anything crazy like that?
I don't have that. I definitely use projects though. So we use Claude just because industry standards, in terms of the HIPAA and security and regulatory, everything. I use chat for personal life. I use Claude for work. But I use projects in Claude so that I can kind of build up that database of the knowledge it has of the ongoing project whenever I'm working on. And so no agents yet, but like the info I put into it, because I'm sure with AI, it's only as good as what you put into it. I do put a lot of background info. So like, let's say I'm working on a participant guide versus something that's site facing. I try to pull those details in so it understands the audience I need that help it for. If that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. All right. Let's keep rocking and rolling.
I love the wheel, by the way. It just like reminds me like I'm on a game show.
Thank you so much. All right. So this is a longer one. If you swap the jobs of a big city mayor and the head of clinical operations at a pharma company for a month, who comes closest to meeting their goals?
Ooh. I feel like, my gosh, that's a really good one. So like, I want to say the mayor because maybe just the power structure, they might have the ability to make those or to impact change more immediately. Or like I feel like pharma, there are so many different inputs to be considered and just different departments kind of working with one another that I feel like there's always delays with certain things being planned. So I think the mayor, would accomplish their goals more easily and quicker. Yeah.
All right. Got it. I don't think we need to dive deep on that one. Some of these we're going to pull the thread a little bit, and some of them the question is the question.
Yeah, keep it going.
All right. Oh man. Okay. So this is an easy one. What was the last ticketed event you went to?
Now, is that like work or like?
I would say probably personal, like anything where you had to pay money to get in. Could be music, could be a movie, could be
Oh,
sports.
okay, that's fine. Let me think. Like if it wasn't a movie, it'd probably be like Cirque du Soleil. I saw the Cirque du Soleil show. Louisa was really awesome. I'd never been to Cirque du Soleil. My younger sister finally convinced me to go with my mom and her, and that was really fun. So I kind of was like holding my hands and clenching when they were doing some of the like jumping from one swing to another. They don't have any like backup cords. I'm like, yo, like die. Okay, wait incorrectly. So like I love the edge of my seat, but also like it's kind of terrifying. So like please don't die in front of me, please.
Yeah, for sure. You're like, it's entertainment, but also my heart rate is elevated. I don't know if that's
Yes.
correct.
Yes. It's like good, but like
I just have to tell this because it's so wild. I got back last week from vacation, visited my dad in Virginia. He loves going to Cirque du Soleil shows, but always goes to the same ones. And he went out to Las Vegas with my brother, who convinced him to go see the Michael Jackson one.
oh.
And he can't stop talking about it. He's like, it's the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. But he was shocked that everyone knew the songs. He was like, I'd heard maybe one or two of those songs, but everyone was singing along. I'm like, the most famous musician of all time, and of course
Yeah.
my dad doesn't know anything about that. Anyways, all right, Cirque du Soleil, highly recommend from both of us.
Yeah.
If you are in a location that has a Cirque du Soleil option, you can get
Absolutely.
100% of the guests on this podcast recommending it. We're narrowly avoiding these blue questions. All right, here we go. Is there an assumption that you had when you started at Datacubed that you've had to change your mind about in the last couple of years working there?
Yes, and one moment. Sorry about that. I think my camera just conked out. Give me one second. Let me switch to the other camera.
Yeah, it happens. I'll either edit it in post or we'll have this hilarious interlude.
Okay. Hilarious interlude. Okay, this is not as good as my other camera, but just to keep it moving. When I first got to Datacubed, I had seen the app before I started and was super excited about the gamified elements. Just the like in the app, they being the participant makes an avatar, and that kind of ties into the engagement process of how we see the higher compliance and retention rates in the app. And what I was surprised about was like, I thought that immediately everyone in the market would love that. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. I personally love personalization of anything. I'm the person where if I can add my picture or make an avatar of myself, I will. I have a personal photo on like any online account, work or personal life related. I always upload a photo. I'm like, yeah, you should know who I am and all that. But I guess what I was surprised to learn is that there has been pushback and that not every sponsor or CRO sees the benefit of that gamification. So I guess I've been at the company like 4.5 years now. I'm still surprised just to see that the initial response sometimes from the sponsors in the market to that gamified elements of the app.
Yeah, I saw a post from someone on your team. I don't remember who it was, who was talking about like, hey, sometimes people want the gamified thing and we can do that. And sometimes people don't want it at all. And so we are happy to deliver you the vanilla ice cream version of the same thing. Like the core is about generating quality data and you can do that one way or the other. Has that been something you guys have had to add because people sometimes don't get it?
Yeah, actually. So we originally started focusing on patient engagement. And now, we are a big player in terms of eCOA, ePro. We're getting recognized with the other competitors out there. But in terms of an optionality, that is something that we're still increasing. Ideally, the goal would be to have participants kind of pick their own adventure and have them decide if they want the gamified versus non-gamified version. But definitely just from feedback that we've received, now we have those very two clearly different pathways of you have a fully gamified chance in the app or version, and then you have the version where we can strip it down and it's just they're getting their e-pros, you're completing the assessments, and that's it. And we can kind of turn on or turn off different elements because of those requests from sponsors, despite what we heard from participants. But everyone's different, so you have to kind of have the optionality to meet everyone where they are.
Yeah. That's fair. All right. This is just occurring to me in real time, and maybe it's a dumb question, but I know that like eCOA is often sitting on like critical path situation. So when you were speaking, the first thing that occurred to me was like, yeah, just let patients pick if they want to upload their avatar or if they just want to have the vanilla experience. But is there a chance that like if patients picked, it could impact the data? Like, is there any, would you ever get pushback from an agency saying like, well, some of these patients had an avatar wandering through the jungle and some of them just were filling out surveys? Like, are you even allowed to provide optionality for patients?
And that's kind of where we're at, Steve, of like, we haven't deployed that option yet because it is something that we're still looking into in terms of how would that impact the overall data. Because a lot of the issues, especially with clinical research, is making sure that the experience is the same for participants. So we've also seen, with gamified version of the app, you get the higher retention and compliance. So we haven't deployed that solution yet because we're still just trying to figure out how would that look. If you have half of the participants getting the added images and animations and things like that, and the other half doesn't, I would assume that would result in a very clear difference of the data that's being collected in the retention and compliance rates. So that's why we haven't done it yet. We're still kind of just looking into what would that look like, because that would absolutely be a concern. That it would be totally different than just depending on participant experience.
I just realized I had the wheel like sitting there the whole time. So the audio version of this pod is going to be more enjoyable.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Thank you. That's really helpful and also very interesting. Can you wander through a jungle? Is that one of your options?
You can, well, say a jungle, but like there are different world versions. We have like, it's not a jungle, it's more like a worldly one where you have major cities. So you'll see like the Opera House, you'll see like the Statue of Liberty and different images kind of firing off and developing on the study map. There's like a Zen garden. So it's kind of looks like a jungle, but it's supposed to be the Zen garden. You have like a yogi doing namaste and different images that fire off. But yeah.
Right on. I just wrapped up being in a vaccine trial and I had to do a weekly diary entry for like 70 consecutive weeks. And it was just open up. It always had an error and it was like, hey, enter your code. And then I was like, okay. And then it was like, enable permissions. And I'm like, I enable permissions every week, guys. And then I answered 2 questions and then that was it. So hopefully they got the data they needed from me. I felt I was very compliant.
I was just going to ask, like, were you actually compliant?
I was super compliant. Also, the site, if I hadn't done it like by 6 o'clock the day I was supposed to do it, I would get a text. Hey, reminder, fill out your diary. And I would always do it. So
love it.
It was, I felt shameful every time they needed to text me. My goal was to, even though it was an automated text, like there wasn't someone on the other end, like sadly texting me, but I still felt bad. I was like trying to beat the text. I didn't want them to have to think of me as a potential.
I feel like that's the goal though. It's all about that motivation. Oh, it gets you to do it. So.
There it is. All right. I got a quote. How a patient feels should be as important as what the lab says. Agree or disagree?
Oof. I want to say agree. However, I want to have the caveat because like it depends on what they're feeling and what that feeling is based off of, if that makes sense. Because sometimes they might just not understand. But
okay, sure.
Perspective is first and foremost absolutely key. Agree.
Right. Like if someone had a bad burrito, that shouldn't impact the outcome of like their clinical trial for migraines or whatever. But like in general, the drug should be doing something in their life. Okay. Do you want to know who said this?
Yes.
This was Kyle Hogan, CEO of your company. He was taking me to eCOA crash course and explaining like the nuances and stuff. So I'm curious, like his kind of point to me was like, the lab test, if the end result is some objective clinical value that is disconnected from the patient experience, like that's not that helpful. And like you could even get a drug approved that patients don't want. How do you operationalize a statement like this where patient feelings should at least matter? Maybe not as important or whatever, but it should at least matter. How do you turn that into meaningful data?
Ooh, I love that. And I think that kind of goes back to just even the studies that we're deploying. We really encourage when we can to utilize those satisfaction surveys or those additional kind of more exploratory endpoints and questionnaires with patients. So you're going to have feedback throughout. Because to your point, great, we get the data, but like if it's a pain to take that drug or any of the other procedures are annoying or inconvenient for participants, cool, you might have a drug that helps, but if no one's actually taking the drug, then what's the point? So that's why I do think it's really key to get participant feedback multiple times throughout the study and to get a real pulse on how the study's going from their perspective. Because again, the drug that you create is only as good as if anyone's actually using it to solve the issue.
No further comments. Cool. Shout out Kyle. I was hoping you would be like, disagree, like that's the worst thing I've ever heard, and then it would be awkward at the office.
No, Kyle and I are very aligned, which I think kind of makes sense. The dream team, we all kind of have the same mindset with things.
All right. What is a piece of media that radicalized you? So just think of any opinion or any viewpoint where you're like kind of on the polar end of what people think, and something that got you there. Could be an article, could be an essay, could be a movie, song.
Okay. All right, let me say an example and let me know if this is kind of what you're hitting on. So I'm all about increasing awareness of clinical trials. A lot of the people I talk with outside of obviously our space have no idea. Like when I say I'm in clinical research or clinical trials, some people still have no idea that like anyone can enroll in a study. It's not just for a specific audience. You don't have to be from a certain background or education or always have some life-threatening disease to be part of clinical research. There's so many different avenues. However, and I can't remember the ad, and probably best I don't, I'll call it out, but there was a recent clinical research ad that I just cringed at. I couldn't believe it because I was like, oh, this is where everyone is getting some of their opinions on the clinical research, because it was just almost, it read like a parody. I loved what the company was trying to do to make it nice and light and the same outfit color scheme that everyone had. They were singing and dancing. And I'm like, but this is exactly why some people view us as like, what are you even doing? Like that you're just trying to tout this drug and like force it down our throats and make it seem like it's all happy-go-lucky when there's real side effects and kind of life-threatening symptoms associated with it. And so I don't know if that has like changed my view. I don't say changed my view, but kind of like I could see the other side of people that kind of push back on big pharma and kind of view us as like this bad guy from that ad, because I was like, okay, this is exactly what we're talking about. Of like, that's not realistic. Like, not everyone's just be singing and dancing in a circle. I'm not saying the other ads where it's like super sad and like really, emo and it's just like I'm dying. Like, I mean, I don't know what the proper way. I'm not marketing, that's not my thing. But at the same time, I just felt like that ad was not it. Cause I was like, oof, this is just giving me a bad taste of clinical research and how we're introducing drugs and additional care to people. It really read like a joke. Like I actually thought it was a skit and I was like, oh, this is a real I was like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a problem. I've spent a lot of time looking through and thinking about ads, and sure, I think that's a good example. Seeing something where you're like, that's not the way it should be, kind of cements what you do believe, and maybe takes you a step towards caring even more about it. My initial question was a piece of media that radicalized you against corporate utopianism, but I asked you before the podcast and you did not feel like you've been radicalized against that. So my answer for that question is the movie Office Space. I watched it when I was in high school, and it like shaped my idea of like what, I don't know how or why, probably because I was in high school, of what like office culture is. And so I've always had this like begrudging, like I'm against it. I don't even know what it is, like corporate life, but in my mind, I don't like it because of that movie. Classic. Mike Touch. Thanks for nothing.
That's a solid movie though, but I can see that.
I think it's elite and it belongs in a museum. All right. Here we go. What's something that a person who's maybe worked with eCOA as part of a trial before, but never worked in eCOA, like never been on the inside of it, like consistently gets wrong or misunderstands?
I think even to this day, people really misunderstand the flexibility that's needed. I think we're still trying to create solutions that work into people's daily lives versus then making people change their daily lives to fit into the clinical trial. What that means is, for example, let's say there's a study and we're talking about questionnaire deployment. And it's a questionnaire that needs to be filled out like twice a day. Some people might put a specific window. Okay, cool. Well, we want to make sure they fill it out in the morning, they fill it out in the afternoon or the evening. We have these set times that we're deploying it. Great. But then there's the other side of like, cool, now you have those set windows and not everyone's schedule aligns with that. So then you might end up having a bunch of participants that are late or having to do, a paper completion of the diary because they're still maybe within that 24-hour frame, but not within that locked schedule of when that diary is being deployed. And so I just feel like some people underestimate when they're designing different workflows for the studies of like, okay, let's take a step back and be realistic of how is this going to fit into someone's daily life who's dealing with not only this diagnosis, but maybe has kids, has family, or other commitments outside of the trial. So I still feel like we still have a ways to go with that just from some situations I've seen thus far. And yes, that might have been a real example. I don't know.
Listen, I think it's weird that we would recruit people who have commitments outside of the trial. Patients need to understand that it is data first.
How would you have a life and other things that I have? That's so weird.
On a scale of like 1 to, I'm just making this up off the top of my head, but like
Okay.
1 to 5.
Okay.
No, maybe the scale is not the right thing. How frequently do you get people who are just like, why can't I just use like SurveyMonkey to ask these questions, or like any generic survey software?
Yeah. And you know what? Honestly, not as often. It's more so of not a SurveyMonkey, more so like we actually still even get the fight, which I cannot believe that in 2026, we still get the fight of like, why not just use paper? Why can't we just use paper versus the technology? And I'm like, really? It can list so many reasons.
You mean like for something like my vaccine trial, we're at a weekly survey. They would say like, why can't we just send him home with
We still get those comments.
a worksheet?
People still don't understand the benefits, which it's unbelievable. But yes, in 2026, we still get some questions of like, well, we could just use paper for that. And it's like, no. I always say, like, even if you don't use us, just don't use paper for the benefit of your participants and the data that you'll get. Do not use paper. I'm sure there's some scenarios where it makes sense. It's a smaller population. They're in the hospital. There's an easier way to ensure they are completing that data in an accurate time frame and are actually doing it. But like really, so I haven't seen the pushback in terms of like, why not just use like a SurveyMonkey? It's more so what's the differentiator with our platform, or just what's even the benefit of using ePro over paper? Which I know.
I couldn't imagine. I couldn't imagine using I would just keep that sheet of paper safe and tucked away until I needed to show it to someone, and then I would just answer it all at once because I would lose it otherwise.
Absolutely, I would. I feel like what they always say was like, what doctors and nurses are like the worst patients, but because they're whatever. But same thing. Even as a trainer or even just given my role, I have so many sheets all over my desk, and I have to write a new post-it note every day, what to do. So that's the post-it note I follow. But to that point of I leave stuff till the last minute all the time, despite all the reminders, all the things. I'm the same. I'm there's no way paper would survive me in paper in a study now.
Yeah, I understand some of the arguments for paper at different points in the journey, but not that one. That's crazy.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Last one. We're on time. We don't have to rush.
Gosh, it's going by fast, dude.
All right. If you could sit in on every protocol design meeting for next year, what's a question you would force the room to answer before the protocol gets finalized?
Immediately comes to mind is how we considered the participant burden of what we're asking of them. That is the first thing. And again, that's just kind of the top thing that I'm passionate about is not only obviously clinical trial awareness, but if we're deploying it in a way that truly meets participants' needs. I don't want to be wasting anyone's time. I don't want to be asking arbitrary questions that don't make sense. Sometimes the wording, I'm that's not clear to me. So I'm that can't be clear to a participant. So really considering what is the burden. So in terms of those different categories, is the vocabulary appropriate? Is the timing appropriate? Is the ask too much? If they're coming back every week, can we maybe group that so that way instead of every single week, we can do a longer visit so they have less times they have to travel to the site, and maybe instead of 4 1-hour visits, we do 2 2-hour updates or something like that. So that thing like top of mind is like, what is the burden of everything we're proposing for this study for participants?
I feel like, and I've only been in the industry 7 years, but I feel like I've seen kind of a shift. Like most people, I don't think that's a hot take. Like I think a lot of people would be like, yeah, we gotta listen to the patient voice and consider the burden. So like, is that happening, do you think? Or do you think they're asking that question burden maybe more high level conceptually and not actually working through what you just said? Or are there layers of burden that are just consistently being missed, even though everyone's saying they're thinking about it?
I think it's a little bit of both in terms of like, I do think you're right. There's definitely more of a shift into like patients first and taking a look at that. But I think it's more of, are they asking the right questions? So like to your point of things being missed, I think we still just need actual participants and that advisory throughout the protocol writing process, just truly reviewing, and maybe there are things that we're missing and not considering of that audience just because of certain indications and diseases of what that day-to-day looks like. And there's certain considerations that we wouldn't know, we being the clinicians or whoever ClinOps writing these protocols just wouldn't be aware of because we're not actually the ones living with that indication. So I think there's been a lot of improvements being done towards representing participant voice, but I still think it's kind of like it's done at the beginning, but then maybe not at the end. So they had that initial review and then they just kind of read the protocol and move forward with it. And then it's like after the study's been deployed, then you have those protocol deviations where it's like, oh, we maybe should have deployed it a different way, or we could have asked it a different way. So that's where I think in terms of, yeah, it's not a hot take. Everyone's talking about incorporating the patient voice more, but I think we need to do it more frequently throughout that study design. Not all or even just do a review. Again, that's why I like the satisfaction surveys of after the study's been deployed for several months. Is it actually going the way we surmised, or are there different things that are popping up that we didn't take into consideration?
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think like stratifying burden across a couple different categories, like the idea that could language be a burden, or at least a barrier, is different than asking, do they have to go to the clinic too many times, or
Exactly.
how many blood draws can we get away with? I think in kind of the user design, user interface world, there's like the grandma test. Like, is it simple enough for my grandma to use? I think one that I've always just kind of applied before thinking how hard is this going to be to do recruitment for is like the family member test. Like, would you, if you read the protocol, would you refer a family member to this trial? Like, if not, there's a problem, and you can probably isolate it pretty quickly. And I just don't, yeah, that's such a simple heuristic, and I don't know if people are using it.
I agree.
Cool. Is there, I don't know, we've run out of wheel questions, which is a first for me, and yet we have like 2 minutes. I just succinct answers, maybe questions that weren't rich enough in texture, or we just got there with a couple of minutes to spare. Any like off the dome parting shots, anything that you were like, hey, I have this microphone in front of me, it's going to be recorded and put out on the internet. I would be remiss if I didn't mention this thing that matters. And if you don't have anything that leaps immediately to mind, it's not hurtful in the least.
I think ask the questions. That's the top thing I think of like, and not when I say ask the questions, get peer feedback. I think so many of us are so set on our own goals and our kind of milestones that we're trying to achieve that, again, kind of going back to that last question of sometimes just getting another perspective and another set of eyes on it might open the doors of something that we possibly missed in terms of user design or protocol design or anything that we're really deploying in our trials. Get feedback, just get feedback, be open to feedback, because that's the only way we'll get better as just an industry itself of like, don't be afraid of asking what others are seeing. How are others deploying things? I know we all have to make money and we have competitors and things like that. However, there's a lot of great insight out there if we're just willing to kind of be open to that review and just additional perspectives. So ask the questions. Just don't be afraid to be like, hey, can you look at this? Or hey, have you encountered this before? What do you think? And then, like I said, always getting that participant feedback is key, but like really getting their feedback, not just like, okay, you like this, great, we'll check it off the list. No, have the interview, have the actual conversation with real patients and people living with it.
It's really good. Well, I hope that I am at the same conference as you in the very near future.
Yeah.
So we can hang out. Thank you so much for your time and thoughtful answers, and I will talk to you soon.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Bye.
All right.
Thanks for listening to 30 Minutes Randomized. If you enjoyed the show, please feel free to like, subscribe, review, or share it with a friend. Until next time, I'm your host, Steve Wimmer, reminding you to stay random.